part of Going for Two Live. My name is Kyle Senra, and one of my co-hosts, Dr. James Freddy, is here. So, what up, Doc?
How's it going, guys? Doctor is in. Doctor is working nights again tonight, so get to do this and hang out with you guys, talk some football, and then read CAT scans all night. So looking forward to that. But happy to be here. Happy to see you guys.
Yeah, so prowled in here, and we'll definitely talk. And talking again with us this week is Gerson, and no Hamid this week. So maybe some topics we'll save for next week that we want to discuss, particularly with Hamid. But Gerson, welcome back again. It's weird calling you guest. You're here all, as often as any of us, and it's great. I love it.
I'm just gonna change my name to Shane Falco, the replacement. That's it. I mean, I'll be the guy that you guys ever need a guest spot. I got you.
So just because I know we like to ramble, let's get right to this. So apparently there's been some talk about Amari Cooper, and not quite sure about his health, maybe not 100%. So before I even begin to speculate, we'll go right to the expert. So Doc, What do you know about Amari Cooper right now, and what do you think we can expect fantasy-wise?
All right. Well, it's a little bit of a mystery, but I'll try to untangle it a little bit based on, what's been reported so far. So he had surgery on his ankle in January, which apparently nobody knew about until he posted it on social media that he was in a walking boot. And he was absent from mini camps recently because he was dealing with what they called residual irritation. So that's where we're at. When they asked Coach McCarthy about it, he used the H word, and that always gives me a little bit of trepidation. He said he was hopeful that Cooper would be able to practice, would be available for training camp. So that's where we're at with things. So before I go deeper into it, I just want to ask you guys, how does that hit when you hear that, kind of as not coming from necessarily an injury background? How does that hit you guys? What do you think about that? Do you pay attention to it, or do you just okay, well, whatever, it doesn't really change my outlook?
I pay attention to it because I pretty much take it day by day with any injuries. I think that's the best thing you can do. You can't predict the future because you never know. Someone can wake up one day and slip on a toy, those damn labels, and with Amari Cooper, we got to remember, he's already been labeled as a boomer bust. I don't think he is a boomer bust because he performed as a wide receiver too in 20 of the 41 games with the Cowboys. So I think he's okay. I just, at the draft value that he's at, that worries me because you're either spending a fifth or a sixth rounder, maybe. I'm not spending no damn fourth, but fifth or sixth, I don't know. I think that's where he's going. But
I've seen him actually going higher.
Is he?
Yeah, I've seen him in startups going as high as the late third, early fourth.
Yeah, he's 27 years old. He's still pretty young, and wide receivers, I think I like to say their peak value start dropping after 31, 32, But I just think I think I'm out, man. If it's hopeful. They got weapons there. They got target not to give away. They got too many people to eat, So that worries me.
Kyle, how does that hit you?
Yeah. So what we know is right now he is hurt, right? How serious or not, but he's not. We know he's not 100%. So we kind of I go with what off we know. If we know he's not healthy, I think you have to have a little bit of hesitation. I think, Amari Cooper, the type of receiver he has been throughout his career, and I know last year it changed a little bit, but I still think it'd go with what he's been the majority of the time. Maybe Dak really is the magic remedy for this, but really inconsistent anyway. You're always going for, you're not necessarily playing him every week, even if you draft him early, right? So he's the type of receiver that's already risky anyway. So a little extra injury risk means, okay, you have some weeks at the start of the season where you avoid him a little more heavily, maybe, compensate you might play him more heavily at the end of the season than you would. So is that the range where you can, start to go for those high upside shots at receivers? I think that's a little early, but it also depends. Some people might take the high upside shots at receiver early and then go for the safe players, look for the slot receivers, the guy with high PPR floor later on, right? So I feel like the people who are drafting risk heavy on receivers early are still probably inclined to take Cooper around there because they're already taking him knowing that there's risk anyway. So this is added risk, but I think with Cooper, the reward is pretty massive. If he really is the number one receiver for Dak Prescott, and if they pass as much as they do, that there is reward there. So I think it's all about how you construct. I think I'm with you, Gerson. I think we go this kind of similar way with receivers. We want to go with the safe receivers early, knowing that it's so risky late. Take the high upside shots late, right? So I would also favor CeeDee Lamb, but I think. I don't know. Has anyone seen a startup draft where CeeDee Lamb hasn't gone ahead of Cooper? Like, I think that's already kind of established.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. So, two things I wanted to talk about this specifically regarding to Cooper's injury. So they talk about residual irritation or inflammation, and this is where the terms like no structural damage comes into play, because if he gets another MRI or he gets more imaging, they could hit you with that and say there's no structural damage, and that sounds reassuring. And technically it's true. There is no structural damage to his ankle, but with something like residual irritation or inflammation, it really freaking hurts. So it's going to limit his ability to do the things that he needs to do in order to be successful on the field. And, making something a pain tolerance issue sounds great in theory, but there's all sorts of other issues as far as biomechanics and just your ability to do things. Like if you have inflammation in your ankle, you're not going to be able to run, cut, and do all those other things as easily as you would if you didn't. So even if all those things are true, it could still limit him. So that's number one. Number two is whenever injuries come up, and this is what I present to you guys, kind of as like an encompassing thought process. Ask yourself the question, who benefits? If this is real, which it could end up being nothing. He could come back, have no issues from it, play training camp, play the whole season, and everything else you said is true, and none of this is anything. Or it could be something, and he could end up missing time. He could be limited, et cetera, et cetera. So let's pull that thread. And the question that I always ask is, if this is a real thing, who benefits? So, Kyle, you started talking about CeeDee Lamb, and he certainly would benefit, but his acquisition price, and we talked about him last time and the time before that, like people already have him in the top 5, which is completely legitimate. However, what about Michael Gallup? Now, he's the one that's interesting to me, because if this turns out to be real, his startup ADP is kind of in the 80s. He's already projected, assuming health for Amari Cooper, for over 1,000 yards. If Amari Cooper misses any time, he could smash ADP, and he's really interesting to me.
Yeah, I think that'd put him 8th round, right? And, even in super flex leagues, that's kind of a dead zone for running backs, right? So you want to take high upside shots at receivers. I think Gallup, probably like Cooper, unfortunately, kind of both present a lot of like low floor on a weekly basis, but so much high upside ceiling. I almost wonder at this point, though, are they already seem like the same player to me. So I kind of already feel like pivoting in that direction anyway. So I think this injury just makes me more inclined. Again, I think the people who, again, go risky heavy early are still probably going to take Cooper at his price. So I think I almost feel like the groups are going to stick to their ground. For those of us that were kind of already fading Cooper, I think this is more of a reason to. So.
Yeah, and people like it, when injury analysts make a stand. I agree with Gerson. Like I think I'm out at this point. Like on Cooper. Like I'm out for her dynasty startup, and I'm out for this year. Like I'd rather just take my shots. Either if I'm going to spend a high pick, I'd rather take CeeDee Lamb, and if I'm going to avoid that situation or go in another direction, then I really am looking at Michael Gallup, and I'm excited for that proposition. Even if Cooper is fine, like he's still a good value, but he's got the potential for a lot more. So that's where I'm at with it.
Now, could we add an extra layer? With Cooper out, maybe they expect, okay, maybe they'll target the tight ends more heavily. So now, if you had to pick a tight end, who's it's going to be? Is it going to be Schultz or is it going to be Jarwin? Which tight end are you guys kind of putting your hats on as the tight end that'll be more productive? So maybe even without an Amari Cooper injury, just in general. But.
I actually think it's going to be Tony Pollard that's going to benefit from this, because he's already lining up as a slot, and basically, CeeDee Lamb can play the outside. Michael Gallup can play basically both. But the thing is, like, they've been saying that they want to get Tony Pollard involved in the offense. And they're going to try to do it kind of like, what's the name that does it? Kind of like the Carolina Panthers when they have CMC, and then they'll put out the wide receiver that just went to the Washington football team.
Samuel?
Yeah. So like Samuel, he can move everywhere. I just don't know if Scope or what's the other tight end's name? That guy. Jarwin. I don't know who's gonna actually start. And to be honest, I'm not too interested because they could both be splitting it. So my opinion, I think Michael Gallup is probably the best value to buy right now due to he's probably going wide receiver 50. Like he's so low down there. I think I actually have Michael Gallup pretty high on my rankings on Dynasty, but I have him wide receiver 35. But the reason why is because he's going to be a free agent after the season. So if you acquire him and Cooper's out, you're only going to get better value during this season. And he's talented enough to go somewhere else, kind of like what Curtis Samuel did, kind of like what all these free agents and wide receivers. Because he's not going to ask elite money. And we said this on the other show, where teams are no longer paying wide receivers elite money unless they think they're truly elite. I don't know how
like Gettleman did with Galladay.
Yeah, I don't know how Kenny Galladay got it.
David Gettleman. Remember, David Gettleman's the GM there.
Yeah. So Kenny Galladay was in New York for like freaking 4 days too. So like he got treated at dinner and everything. Like I'm like, dang, this guy's like, he must be the next Randy Moss, but I don't see it. But Michael Gallup is probably the best buy. But to answer your question, sorry, I got carried away. I guess I go with Jarwin because I think Jarwin's more talented than Scope. But that's just my opinion.
Oh, that's interesting because I was actually thinking Schultz because he showed the ability to do it last year and his acquisition cost is going to be lower. And I feel like he's got kind of an even money shot to be just as productive.
Yeah, I mean, he's just not
a high percentage chance, but
it was an ACL tear for Jarwin last year, right?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Has there been any news about that? Because I know that happened so early that I think all expectations are he's full for training camp.
I haven't heard anything negative about it. My presumption is at this point that he's going to be okay. But that's another reason that I'm thinking about Schultz too. Like when he got the opportunity, granted they had a lot of injuries and there was mitigating circumstances and everything else, but he showed the ability to do it. They are going to spread the ball around a lot on that. They're going to pass a lot. There's going to be a lot of pieces of the pie to go around. So if you want a cheap piece of that offense, it's not going to cost you much to get it. And let's say Jarwin is delayed or he gets hurt again or whatever. Now you've got a start. You got a top 10 tight end for not much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, there's so many Cowboys pass attempts likely this year, so we could spend so much time on it, but we'll probably refrain from that now. Let's go to a team that's basically the exact opposite, a team that apparently wants to run the ball 500 times, the San Francisco 49ers. And so for dynasty purposes, and they literally have enough players that this actually makes this list interesting. How would you rank, what would be your top 5 for the 49ers in terms of running backs for dynasty value right now with the depth chart they have? I mean, they've got about 7 guys on the depth chart. So who do you have for the top 5? If you want to, I know when we asked this in our chat, Gerson gave an immediate answer. I don't know if we want to read that out because, it is quite humorous. Or Gerson, I don't know if you want to, do you remember what you said?
Yeah. Hold on. Well, I know Trey Sermon's number 1 for sure. And so when I read that, I thought I was asked. Okay, I thought I was asked. So I thought you were going to be like, oh, here's G's list, here's Doc's list. So I did it like that. But hold on, I got it right here. Trey Sermon up here. Mostert, Elijah Mitchell, Jeff Wilson, who cares? Random running back off the street, and Juice, the fullback.
Okay, Juice. I wasn't sure because use check, right? I also wondered, was that Christian Juice, the Detroit Red Wings defenseman, thinking that's that easy? But I guess that's the same principle as number 5 because he hasn't really played football. But yeah. Okay. So,
I'm high on Sermon. Like I'm way high on Sermon. I was high on Sermon.
We know.
Okay, and so we know how Gerson feels about Sermon. So Doc, just how do you feel about the way Gerson presented that? It's Sermon number 1 and it's Sermon by a mile. Do you first off agree that it's Sermon as the number 1 dynasty value for these running backs? And second, do you agree with the gap?
Gerson, I love you, man, but no and no. I don't think that it's that disparate. And I don't agree with the order either. And the reason is it's ADP and acquisition cost. And the thing is that Sermon is kind of being priced right now like none of these other guys exist. I'm seeing, his ADP kind of in the 80s, and it keeps climbing. He's going ahead of guys in dynasty startups like Debo Samuel, Michael Gallup, who we just talked about, Boyd, Laviska Shenault, and running back wise, he's going ahead of guys like A.J. Dillon, who's essentially an injury to Aaron Jones away from being a top 10 running back potentially, Damian Harris, who's already essentially got the job in New England, and Mike Davis, who just signed a contract to play in Atlanta and doesn't really have any competition. So I don't see, Sermon necessarily like there's a non-zero chance that he ends up being nothing in this backfield because Mostert ends up being fine and produces because one of these other guys takes the pass catching role. I get it that they used third round capital on him, but they also drafted another guy in the same draft and they got 15 other guys there. So like at that price, it's not that I don't like Sermon, I do, but at that price I'm out. So he's actually third on my list. I'd rather have Elijah. I have Elijah Mitchell number one because of the athleticism and because of his almost equal opportunity to get a piece of this offense. So if I'm going to take a shot, I'm going to take a shot on the guy who's essentially free versus the guy that's going in the 9th round. And then I got Mostert too because Mostert's done it before. And you don't need to look any further than the NFC Championship game. Kyle, sorry to bring this up, but 29 carries, 220 yards, 4 touchdowns. He even chipped in 2 catches just to put the cherry on the pie.
And he didn't really throw that many passes, so to even get 2 catches is amazing.
I mean, yeah, he dealt with a high ankle sprain twice last year, and he got put on IR twice. But, that was last year. Like, he's still going to – if he's back, he's going to be involved. Whenever he's healthy, he's going to be involved. I can't see him not being involved. And there's 3 other guys we didn't even talk about yet.
Gerson, if you can refrain, I will chime in quickly. So I'll be honest, I kind of actually say yes to both answers. I do have Sermon as the number 1 guy. The draft capital they invested in him is serious. The next closest draft capital we've come to for a 49ers running back is Joe Williams, the pound on the table guy Shanahan did himself his first year. But okay, that aside, again, it shows they really are invested in this guy for a reason. Or at least they have a reason. We don't know what that reason is. Presumably to carry the football lots. And he, to me, is the only one who's for sure going to make this team out of training camp. I think everyone else the job is literally on the line. I think there's really very little attached to any of the rest of the backs, so they can easily cut them. And for a lot of these guys, I don't know what their next shot is after the 49ers. So I actually agree with Gerson that it's Sermon by a mile. And I'm not even particularly high on Sermon. I am so low on the rest of these guys. I don't want any of them. You're saying acquisition costs, Doc? Like, sure. To me, Elijah Mitchell's acquisition cost is much more outrageous than Sermon's because he's got really nothing guaranteed. And I'll be honest, I didn't.
What's he going at? Because I didn't really. It didn't look like it was much.
Too high for me because number 2 for me is actually the guy that I think carries the best pass catching upside. Everyone laughs at it. I'm so far the only person to take him in the Scott Fish Bowl. I know not every draft is done, but yeah, Jermichael Hasty. I mean, 3 seasons of college with 25 receptions. No one else has that. Wayne Gallman in his rookie season caught 34 passes, but that's it. 14, 11, 21 last year. And I mean, last year he was a workhorse for 10 games and he only caught 21 passes. There's not much patch catching upside to any of these guys, Sermon included. And so I think if Hasty makes the team, it's going to be because of that route running ability. To be honest, outside of Mostert and I think he's on thin water to make it. Mm-hmm. If Mostert's gone, you've got a bunch of guys that have never been on this team before. Suddenly Hasty's the veteran that knows the system, was on the team last year. Because if it's him, Gallman, Mitchell, and Sermon, he's the veteran that knows the offense. So he's probably the most trusted to run routes. So for your argument of acquisition costs, Doc, I like it because you don't have to. He doesn't have ADP. Just pick him up for free off the waiver wires. I don't want to, outside of Sermon, I don't want to invest any draft capital in any of these guys in the startup. So that's why I've got Hasty at 2. I have Gallman 3 because I think he's got more of a long-term track record than Mostert. Better, he was actually drafted in the NFL draft. He's on to his second team, got decently paid. I might even have him at 2 just because if he leaves the 49ers, it seems like he could still have a chance to land a job somewhere else. Again, Hasty, UDFA, that the 49ers like. I don't know that anyone else likes him. Matt Rule maybe with the Panthers just because he's a college coach, but so I think it's a pretty clear 1, 2, 3 for me of, again, Sermon pretty high. If I can pick up Hasty and Gallman for free, I'll do that. 2, 3 there, and then Mostert 4. I'll probably stay Elijah Mitchell 5 just because he's so young. Jeff Wilson to me, I don't know. I'm not sure he's going to even play this year. We think maybe PUP. He could still be a season-ending IR and not play a single snap, and he's a wasted roster spot. He's not going to get any trade value. He's only useful if he's the goal line back. I suspect that's why they drafted Trey Sermon. Do you think that's true, Gerson, that he's going to have all the touchdown upside as the guy they want to pound it in when they get close?
I just think the 49ers, when they made that statement that they're going to run the ball 500 times, it's because of Trey Lance being a running quarterback too. Let's say you divide that by two more running backs, Mostert and Trey Sermon, that's what? Almost like 150 each. So let's say, Trey Lance can run. I mean, the guy ran for 1,100 yards and 14 touchdowns in his in 2019. So, and the way we think Jimmy G tried to run. That guy can't run away from porn stars. So, yeah, there's no way he can run away on the football field. But I definitely love Trey Lance. But I just think if they traded up and they didn't have a lot of draft capital, I understand Doc's point because I do think Elijah Mitchell, is it Mitchell?
Yeah.
Elijah Mitchell is talented. It just draft capital matters to me a lot with running backs. And I know we had this argument before. Does draft capital matter too much? Maybe.
I like to think of it as a discussion and not an argument.
Yeah. Discussion. But yeah, I mean, it's just they divide. The 49ers are just they run the ball and play defense. That's their style of play. And we're going to have to wait and see. But I just think, I feel like besides Thurman and Elijah Mitchell, everybody else is on fringe roster spot for training camp and everything. One of these two of these three guys are going to be cut. So.
Yep. And I mean, of course, I'll always have Kyle Juszczyk. I mean, he's safe to make the team. It's so hard to play him in your lineup every week because he could legit get zeros so often if he doesn't score touchdowns. He seems like he would be a best ball guy because he can catch passes too. So he might have some spike weeks, but if you're playing Dynasty best ball, I'd probably almost consider Juszczyk ahead of everyone except Sermon because of that. It seems like they're always going to use him around the goal line. But if it's roster setting Dynasty, not best ball, I don't. Yeah, like you said, Gerson, he's 7. He's below. At first I thought you read that as like a box of juice. I'd rather just have juice than any of these running backs, and then I put it together. We'll drink to that. Thanks.
Yeah.
I do want to mention Jeff Wilson. He was kind of the forgotten guy just from an injury perspective. Not somebody you should be drafting, but he had meniscus surgery in May. Expectation is he's going to be out 4 to 6 months, which will put him back in October. If all goes well with that, we don't really know what as we just talked about for the last 10 minutes, we don't know what the landscape on the 49ers is going to look like by then. So he's definitely somebody to keep on your radar because he has performed in the past. And let's say a couple of these, Mostert gets hurt and Sermon gets hurt and Elijah Mitchell sucks, then Wilson could be coming back to a job potentially. So, he's definitely somebody you want to keep on your fab or waiver wire speed dial potentially. Just keep him on your radar, not somebody you want to pick up. But he's really been, as we just talked about all these other guys, and he's been forgotten about. But when given the opportunity, Shanahan's used him. He's shown the ability to do it. So a lot of question marks, obviously, but it's a long season, so he does have potential to contribute in this morass of humanity that is the 49ers backfield.
Yep.
You're harassing our vocabulary, and I just made it worse.
I'm just trying to follow your lead. Kyle.
Okay, well, I'll lead us over to another topic here. The Chiefs wide receiver two, because I think if we were to rank the Chiefs wide receivers for Dynasty, I think we'd all be in agreement with Gerson. It's Tyreek Hill way up at the top, probably higher than the screen allows, and then it's everyone else below where the screen allows. Right, like it's not even close. So, but yeah, apparently McCole Hardman's been showing out. Is he everyone's favorite as the wide receiver 2 in this offense?
I'm kind of out on freaking Cole Hardman, man. Like, this guy is just, he's talented. Like, he's fast. But the thing is, he just can't run routes. He can't catch footballs. I mean, this guy is freaking, like, athletic. Like, and that's what everybody thought Tyreek Hill was going to get his guy. But I think they like Byron Pringle. They drafted Cornell Powell. I'm a big Cornell Powell guy. I've been trying to acquire him in all dynasty as like kind of like a, just a roster flyer in the end. I like Cornell Powell. But I don't see McCole Hardman being the guy. Like, what is this? His third year now? Almost his third year, right?
I think it's his third year.
Yeah. And even when he's on the field, I mean, they don't even really use him very much. Because I don't know. I think Andy Reid hates him, but at the same time, he gets playing time. He gets snaps. I'm like, all right, Tyreek Hill, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Travis Kelce. That's what the offense revolves around. And it's just Mecole Hardman. Like, how many times have you said, okay, I'm gonna go buy low on him. And you just 2 years in a row now that you probably bought low, but it didn't pan out. If it pans out this year, I mean, that's great. But everybody's saying Mecole Hardman, but I actually like Cornell Powell quite a bit. So I'm just hoping I can get pretty good value out of him. I mean, the guy is he's fit for what? To play alongside Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill's fast, but Mecole Hardman to me is just I'm not interested in him. I even love him for DFS. Like, that's the perfect DFS player, like boom or bust, and he's like $3,900. So it's like, all right, let's see what you got. But then all of a sudden, you get me a big fat zero.
Empty pockets. What do you think?
So, I mean, it's interesting. Gerson was talking about, like, trying to buy low on McCole Hardman. The buy low was before the NFL draft that year, because no one really thought he was going to go in the second round. And he went in the second to the Chiefs, so that it suddenly made his ADP skyrocket. I mean, I remember some rookie drafts that year where he went in the first round.
Yeah.
And I believe that was the A.J. Brown year, right? So, like, people were making that decision. I'm going to take McCole Hardman. To be fair, I feel like I definitely, in one draft, took Paris Campbell over A.J. Brown. So there's a lot of us that were guilty of not taking A.J. Brown as often as we should have. So it's a lesson we've hopefully learned from that. But, really with Hardman, it's been, the hype's kind of been with, sustaining it. And I don't know how much higher he can go production-wise. So, okay, I think the top 2 targets on the Chiefs last year were obvious, right? It was Kelce and Hill. Who was number 3 on the Chiefs in targets last year?
Was it Demarcus Robinson?
No, Robinson was close. 59 targets was 4th, actually.
Was it Helaire?
No, Helaire was at 54. That puts him at 6th.
Oh, wow. Byron Pringle?
Byron Pringle.
Yeah, you guys are really reaching now, isn't it? I thought this would be more obvious. Why am I asking it right now? McCole Hardman was 3rd on the team in targets last year. He had 62 targets.
You're making it like it was someone else.
Oh, okay.
We got set up.
but okay. So you guys were expecting that. I'm almost a little surprised. Like, I don't remember him producing much, and I almost thought it would have been like a Sammy Watkins or Robinson. I looked in to see he was 3rd on the team in targets. And with Robinson still there, only 3 targets less than Hardman last year. Edwards-Helaire maybe expanding a role. Like, I could see it not happening where he's not number 3 next year. And I mean, like, maybe Cornell Powell, the rookie, comes out and like Gerson said, and produces right away. So it's possible. But even if he's 3rd, is it only going to be like 62, maybe 70 targets max? Certainly was much better than his rookie year. What do you have? His rookie year, he only had 41 targets.
Right.
And it's funny. On more targets, he only had 28 or 22 more yards. His yards per reception dropped from 20.7 on 26 catches to 13.7 on 41. Still decent, but 560 yards, 4 touchdowns. He actually basically didn't, even with the more targets, didn't outproduce his rookie year. So that's a little concerning to me.
I guess the question for me that comes up is, the same thing that I always say. what if Tyreek Hill gets hurt or Kelsey gets hurt? Then who benefits? And, how is it possible to maybe get a cheap part of this offense just in case? Because I think you guys are right. I think if everybody is healthy, then really none of these guys are going to have value. If not, that's when it gets interesting. Now, the thing with Hardeman is his ADP is still like in the 130s, which is pretty high price to pay for somebody who could be that inconsistent and really give you nothing. It's almost like, you're gambling on, an injury or something like that, which, can work out. But I think for me, Demarcus Robinson's interesting. He was second on the team in snaps last year, so he was on the field. He has similar upside to Hardeman if somebody were to get hurt. So if you want a cheap piece of the KC offense just in case for 2021, he'd probably be my guy. Not saying that he's a heavy investment, but you don't need to invest heavy in him to have a chance to have somebody who could potentially be on the field and produce for you.
And Robinson's also shown that ability to have those spiked weeks, multiple touchdown games, big catches. So he kind of presents similar upside to Hardman, like really almost every Chiefs receiver does. So to your credit, Doc, maybe on every dynasty roster have one Chiefs player, even if it's Byron Pringle cheap.
Sure.
If you want to get, if you can spell his name and find him, Gehrig Dieter. Right? I mean, he's been on the team forever, right? Like, if all these injuries happen, he's the guy that's at least been in the system, run the offense. Like, okay, if you lose Hill and Robinson, let's say, they probably want a veteran, like as much as that, they probably want to put Powell out there. They probably want a veteran, right? But he might not make the team, right? And
we have to take into account that Sammy Watkins no longer there either. So,
sure.
And I think we have had games where Tyreek Hill didn't play. I think it was last year he was out for like 8 games, wasn't he?
That was the year before. That was 2019.
Games. Yeah, he missed 1 or 2 games last year, something like that. Nothing major.
Yeah, 1 game. He had played 15. Okay. I think it was 2014. You're thinking, Gerson.
I think the biggest thing that worries me about Mecole Hardman not panning out is that you have the best quarterback in the league throwing the football, and you still haven't became a thing. So,
yeah. I mean, the only thing I would say to that is that all prospects, and we talk about this in baseball and football, like progression isn't linear always. So, he does have talent. He hasn't shown it yet, but that doesn't mean that he's not going to. Like, I think in baseball, like the example that consistently gets used is A-Rod, Alex Rodriguez. Like he was hyped up, came up, stunk, went back down, hyped up again, came up, stunk, went back down, came up the third time, and then became A-Rod. And everybody at that point was like, the third time, everybody shrugs their shoulders. They're like, I'm out. And then he took off. So there is that potential too. Like, he just hasn't shown it yet. He's a talented guy. He's young. He's been in the system. There is potential. At that price, I'm not paying for it. I'd rather take a shot on somebody else. But that's not to say that he's going to be completely worthless. He could be one of these guys. Tyreek Hill gets hurt. Kelsey gets hurt. He finally establishes himself and he does something. It's not necessarily something to bet on, but if you had him on your roster already, I wouldn't necessarily cut him because he hasn't shown anything yet. So just keeping the idea that prospect progression isn't always linear is I think, valuable as well.
Yep.
But as who said it? Going around ADP of wide receiver 30. When didn't someone say Gallup was going like mid 30s?
Let me put it this way.
1,000%.
Doc and Kyle, who would you rather have, Mecole Hardman or Gabriel Davis?
Probably Mecole Hardman. If it's just, I'm not taking price into account.
Yeah, sure. I'll say, who do you think you would rather have, Mecole Hardman or Gabriel Davis?
I'll go Hardman.
Okay.
Yeah, it's close. It's close for me, but I probably would do the same.
Or we could do what Kyle said earlier on, Mecole Hardman or Paris Campbell.
I think I'd go Campbell.
Yeah,
just the injuries scare me a little bit. I think there's more potential there. He could be the number 1 guy in Indy. I think that is interesting for all those Colts receivers.
But it's just so hard. Like like Doc said, like to draft him at there. I think I almost rather go a different route. Like it's just Mecole Hardman hasn't shown me, and usually I'm one of those people. I give wide receivers usually 2 years to show me something, even if it's like an average season, like above average season, the second season. Like after that, I'm kind of like either trying to sell them high with a draft pick to get more return, but to see if someone bites. I mean, right now, Marquise Brown is on that fringe. There's a lot of wide receivers that, you're kind of iffy about. Christian Kirk, hell, Denzel Mims from last year. I feel like everybody kind of like backed off on him now that they drafted Elijah Moore. I mean, unless your name is Nelson Aguilar and you suck for the first 2 years and then you do great in your fourth year now with the Raiders.
Raiders.
Yeah, but yeah, baby. I mean, I don't know. I think I'm out on Mecole Hardman, to be honest. But
I agree. At that price, I would be out. So,
all right. So are we getting out of this discussion now?
Yeah,
into the team analysis. And so shout out to the big boss at Going for Two, Mr. Jeff Lambert on Twitter at JeffLambert77. We're actually going to look at one of his dynasty teams.
Godfather himself.
Yeah, maybe I'll need a Godfather offer here. So how do you want me to do this? Want me to just run through the roster real quick and then we talk or go position by position and say, how do you guys like this? Gerson, you're the guest. If you have any preference, if you like making decisions.
I think, which roster are we talking about?
There you go.
Okay, there's two. I think there's one roster that he has that's actually pretty killer. So maybe we'll shout that out after. Save the best for last. So go with the first roster. I think it's just a couple after your initial message of who cares, random RB off the street, Juice Box, Christian Juice, Use Check, whoever that was.
That's the one with Jalen Hurts as his starting quarterback, right?
Oh, okay. We're getting right to it. So yeah, Jalen Hurts is the quarterback. Backup quarterbacks, by the way, are
Carr, Lockett, and Fields.
Yeah. Definitely Justin Fields. I would almost.
I can run down if you want me to just run down the players. I got it listed out. I can do it real quick, and then we can kind of jump in. So
you got it set better. Thanks, Doc.
Yeah,
way to fix the situation.
No worries. So quarterback wise, he's got Jalen Hurts. He's got Carr from the Raiders, Drew Lock, and Justin Fields. Running back, keep your excitement to a minimum. He's got Chris Evans from the Bengals, Ramondre Stevenson, Darwin Thompson, J.J. Taylor from New England, Jared Dokes in Miami, the aforementioned Jeff Wilson from San Francisco, your boy JaMychal Hasty, and Javian Hawkins. Mm-hmm. Tight end wise, he's got shout out to Ahmed, his favorite player, Evan Ingram, Parham. One of your boys, G, from the Chargers, and Kylan Granson in Indy. And then wide receiver, he's got a big list. He's got two Jets. He's got Mims and Corey Davis, Cortland Sutton, Rashad Bateman, Rieger from the Eagles, Tim Patrick from Denver, Henry Ruggs, Donovan Peoples-Jones, my boy from the Monday Night War Room late pickup, Lynn Bowden from Miami, your boy Gabe Davis, Amir Smith-Marset, and Rodgers, the rookie wide receiver from Green Bay. So there's your list, and we can jump right in.
I think so, and I take this away because this is the roster we weren't supposed to talk about, but. Let's break it down.
No, when we talk about his other roster, he's like, yeah, talk about that roster because, of course, he wants to talk about that roster. It's a juggernaut. We will get to that.
Not much we can suggest with that other roster. To be fair,
this is interesting because it's actually something to talk about. That other roster is like, okay, go out and score 230 points a week. We get it. You're good at fantasy football. Not every roster is going to be a juggernaut. So, we actually got some stuff to talk about here.
So let me rephrase this. This is a roster that we started last year. He's in my league, or our league. This was a 16-team league, dynasty, one quarterback PPR, full PPR, no IDP, just straight up quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, and I think the flex spot. I'm not sure. Two flex spots.
Two flex spots.
Yeah. So basically, I'll tell the story very quickly. Jeff traded Christian McCaffrey. He got asset, but then he made two more trades, which were kind of bad luck for him. But he was smart because he built basically a future zero running back strategy where he's going to accumulate all these picks that he got, and he got a lot of asset for the next year's draft to hopefully draft his running back. That's his plan, and I like it because I always say when you're building a dynasty roster, it's almost like telling a story. You better have a story to tell, whether you're going to win the championship or you're building for the future. But I like this. I like his roster for the future because I love Sutton. I love Bateman. I was high on Rager last year. Didn't work out too well for me, but I think his wide receivers are good. His tight end, I think his quarterbacks are excellent. So, I love the quarterback, Jalen Hurts and Justin Field. You can probably trade Derek Carr for a future pick, but I think this roster has potential depending what he does with those draft assets.
Actually, I guess the second last thing you said, depending what you did in the draft assets. Before that, though, I think is the dashboard I want to entertain here because, like, the way I see this roster, I truly value Justin Fields as this team's QB1. Maybe not who's going to produce the most points this year, but like the value of this team. Mm-hmm. I think Jalen Hurts is actually the sell. We don't know what's going to happen with the Eagles next year. I mean, if Jalen Hurts could play amazing and they still lose enough games where they still draft him anyway, a replacement. So I think, not necessarily, I think maybe the move is to make it in season, but while the perception that Jalen Hurts right now is, a top 15 dynasty quarterback, I know it's single quarterbacks, you may not get the most out of it, but I would look to sell him this year at some point, whether it's before the season or during the season, but I don't want to have him on my roster going into the draft next year. So especially not in a single quarterback league, knowing that Fields is going to take over and he's going to have that job secured. I don't think that Hurts is really worth hanging on to. And I do also agree with you. Like, you maybe sell Derek Carr. I just don't think Derek Carr gets you much value. I think Hurts could actually get a decent return right now. I don't think anyone's going to buy Derek. I mean, I guess 16-team leagues, maybe it's a little different. I don't know that anyone's buying in that still. I don't know that anyone's buying Derek Carr as the starter. I think there's going to be a team out there that's going to pay starter price in a 16-team league for Jalen Hurts. So I'd look to do that almost immediately because I think the idea that, you're saying, Jeff, or Gerson, about Jeff is that it doesn't seem like he's competing this year. So he probably doesn't even mind if, he doesn't have Jalen Hurts and, he has to start Derek Carr every week while he's waiting for Justin Fields. That's probably not.
He might look at those draft assets. There's one pick missing.
Sorry, I didn't see the draft assets. I should actually look.
He's got 4 firsts in 2022, 4 seconds, 2 firsts in 2023, and a second.
If I'm correct, he doesn't have his own pick.
Ah. Okay.
That changes a lot.
True. Yeah.
That kind of blew your mind, huh? Like, I love you, Jeff. I told you didn't want to talk about this roster. I really wanted to talk about your great one, but maybe we can brainstorm for you,
I'd also be willing to sell Cortland Sutton, too. I think that's so. Okay, so again, if you can totally flip the mentality too, though. Do you shop together Hurts and Sutton to get a running back to compete with, right? If that's the idea that he doesn't have his own first, he wants to finish as good as possible and still accumulate the other assets, I'd still trade for a running back, I think. Because I don't know. I mean, to me, Cortland Sutton's just another guy. I know he was productive before, coming off the ACL tear in probably the worst quarterback situation in the NFL. Is Jerry Jeudy going to overtake him? Is he? I don't know. I don't know if he's ever going to be, what he was before.
Nobody's overtaking anything there with Drew Lock at quarterback. So,
So, like, I think, that could be not so great in season too. So those are guys I'd look to sell high on. I think would be Hurts and Sutton are my 2 candidates for sure. I know Gerson presented Carr. Is there a quarter? Go ahead.
So one of the things now, I'll agree with you there, Kyle. I am not sold on Jalen Hurts. I like him. I'm willing to take the chance, but I'm only taking my chance on him if I get him at a good price. By the way, I traded Jalen Hurts. I gave him Jalen Hurts for his $200. It was like $200 fab budget and Irv Smith Jr. So I remember we did that trade, and I think he got a draft pick too. I can't remember. But
he sold you Irv Smith. He must have loved Jalen Hurts because I know how much Jeff likes Irv Smith.
I was shocked, man. But so I did. I traded back into my league draft to draft Justin Fields because I think Justin Fields is a talented quarterback. Him, Trey Lance, and Lawrence are my favorite quarterbacks, obviously. But I wasn't sold on him, so I traded right back into the draft, gave up a future asset, and I'm like, I gotta get a guy. I actually traded Juju for basically Field by Brian Edwards and Paris Campbell. So I mean
it's making a bet that Fields becomes amazing if you needed a quarterback, and if one of Campbell or I already forgot the other guy. Not so much Lewis.
Doc, what's your opinion on this roster? Because I want to hear this.
Yeah, I mean, looking at it, I agree with you. It's not super sexy, but the thing when I see a roster like this and somebody gets to compete, injuries are the great equalizer. To put on your rose-colored glasses a little bit and envision a scenario where if certain guys get hurt, do other players then take a big jump in value, and then can you actually cobble together a competitive year? Because crazy things happen in NFL. And Kyle referenced it in one of the previous shows. If you started out with Saquon Barkley and CMC feeling pretty good until the season started and both of them went out, and then you weren't feeling so good, it can happen. And not planning on winning this year, but that's not to say that he can't kind of luck his way into some competitiveness if certain guys get hurt.
So do you have his first, Gerson?
No, I don't. Someone else does. But hold on, I'm trying to find where the asset is.
Now, and I wonder if this is something maybe to do before the season starts to take that pressure off, package one of those firsts and a second to get his first back. One of the first he thinks on a team that looks really good. Maybe the other manager isn't quite buying it. Like, again, I think if the plan is to rely on 2022 running backs, that philosophy mentality tells me not looking to compete until probably 2022, 2023. And so, if he can get his first back, I'd fully embrace the tank and try and make that first the 101. Which, I mean, whether you still have lots of firsts, whether you get the 101 or not. But it's a good situation to be in, having that much future capital.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So here I'm pulling up his team right now. Hold on, give me a second. Propose a trade. Sorry, give me a second.
Yeah. Okay. So while Gerson's waiting there, I could read through Jeff's good team if everyone wants. Juggernaut team. I might even just say the starting lineup. So real quick, run through this. So Kyler Murray, Christian McCaffrey, Nick Chubb, 3 wide receivers minimum. Mike Evans, Stephon Diggs, Justin Jefferson, tight end of Dallas Goedert, and he's flexing Cam Akers and Keenan Allen, as well as the Colts defense, because everyone loves defenses in Dynasty. David Montgomery's on the bench. Is that Javonte Williams on the bench? Adam Thielen on the bench. Corey Davis on the bench. Rashad Bateman on the bench. Tyler Higbee, I would almost argue, should actually be in the starting lineup, not Dallas Goedert. But I mean, that's two good options at tight end. So I don't know. This roster needs a lot of work here. We should talk about this one forever, right?
Yeah, let's talk about it. No,
you forgot something. Like he also has at tight end cryptocurrency himself, Kyle Pitts. You forgot about that.
Oh, I actually did miss that.
Oh my goodness! Like, come on! Like, you play with 5 years old or what? Like, let me in this league, please. I wanted to have a big, nice team like yours. Oh man, I don't know how we could break that roster down. It's pretty simple. It's the championship team. It's probably the best team for the next 5 years, probably.
And I mean, and again, I think this is. It's not to say that you can't do anything, right? Like, I mean, if you get max value on Keenan Allen right now, I'd probably do it. Okay, knowing you might lose a flex guy. I mean, personally, if he's got 4 running backs he can start every week, I'm probably not flexing a wide receiver, whether it's David Montgomery or Javonte Williams. So, like, if you can sell Thielen and Keenan Allen for max value, I do that, even if it comes in the form of picks. Because then what you do, you just package those picks for other players, right? Like, you would never, someone who's rebuilding selling a running back that you could use, or just maybe another wide receiver, wouldn't give them up for Keenan Allen or Adam Thielen, but they'd give them up for picks. So I think just because you're contending doesn't mean you can't sell players at before their value drops. So I would look to shop Keenan Allen and Adam Thielen. And again, I'm not picky on. I don't mind getting picks back on a team this good. That just again use those picks to buy other players to bolster the roster. In season when we have more information would be the better time to use those to buy players. To be honest, even if the picks do lose a bit of value, you also get more information. So yeah, that's pretty cool.
Freaking ESPN. So I have Jeff's pick. So he had my pick. He had so I'm gonna read this because on Fantasy Pros you can see, and this is, by the way, if you have Fantasy Pros, this is a really great way to acquire a pick. Even if people think their rosters are great on paper, they just suck. And the next thing you know, you have a top 5 pick because you gave up a player and downgraded a little bit. I do this all the time. So he has my pick, which I'm a top 5 team. He has Alex Pickett's pick, which is 3rd overall on the ranking. On this is a 16-team league, guys. He has going to the Super Bowl, which is actually a bottom 6 team. So it's possible. And I know this owner, he is very trading frenzy. He's what I like to call get your hand off the keyboard, So that pick could actually be something. And then he had Royal Green Bay, which is a top 9 team. But I always say in the mid-range, injuries can happen, and that can happen to everybody, though. And then he has those are the first round picks. Then he has 4 second rounders. So, so he had 3 picks that are basically maybe the top 5 teams, but then 2 other picks mid-range, but he doesn't have his own pick. If I were him, I would trade whatever draft capital it takes to get his pick back. Those extra picks, and hopefully maybe a player, maybe Cortland Sutton in let's say first round pick. I don't know who has this pick, to be honest. I can go find out, but I don't have the time for that. Let's say
we'll just say to Jeff, right? Again, I said it earlier, 1st and 2nd, give up one of those presumed later 1st and maybe even 2 seconds to move up and get that. And maybe you get, like you said, maybe you get 3 picks that are early to mid 1st, and that looks a lot deeper and better, and could maybe guarantee some positional scarcity at running back to at least land one. So I definitely packaging those picks together to move up, which I know Jeff says he likes to do anyway. That's kind of a strategy of his, is accumulate thirds, use them, maybe all of them, to move up just into the 2nd round and grab players there. So maybe the same thing with seconds. Again, maybe use a guy like Cortland Sutton or Jalen Hurts to help facilitate that. But I would try and get his own 1st back, to be honest. It is a good point, Gerson.
I think the biggest thing of all of this team and everything, before Doc dies and he doesn't go to work tonight, I think the biggest thing is this: who is the owner of this team is what matters. Because Jeff will be active. Jeff will pick up players. There's nothing on the waiver wires. Trust me, I already tried.
16 team with this many roster spots. I kind of figured.
But you never know. Every year we have one player that comes out of nowhere. Mr. James Robinson. Mr. something. But he's active. He can make trades. Heck, maybe there's players that other people don't value as much as he does, and he makes a good trade. And next thing you know, this team is in contention. We've seen it happen every year. Some player blows up and it helps the roster significantly. But.
Yep. No, very well done. I think, So I think there are moves to be made. And again, it seems like Jeff does have a plan. So I don't think he needs to deviate from that plan. If he really truly is targeting that 2022 class.
In week 1, he plays me, by the way.
We're looking at running back here. Let me just put a scenario out for you guys, since we just talked about it. I want you to squint really hard and look at this roster and imagine a scenario in October where Sermon, he gets hurt or busts. Elijah Mitchell is selling insurance door to door. and Raheem Mostert is injured, and Jeff Wilson comes back. He's the starter. JaMychal Hasty is the pass catching back, and Joe Mixon, who
Imagine
is
that.
the most polarizing figure at running back, I think, this year, just either gets hurt again or it's not working.
Uh-oh. I feel
Sorry,
like that was
we're trying to react, but you cut out.
yeah, no, you kind of cut off at the last half, which basically is kind of reminiscent of this roster, to be honest. Kind of choppy a little bit. Sorry, Jeff.
We get it. I mean, like, there's the what if game always, right? I mean, like, we said it. I mean, last year, if you had Julio Jones, Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, Travis Kittle, George Kittle, you were sitting pretty in Dynasty. You were like, oh, this team's a championship team. Next thing you know,
Right.
And I saw this myself because there was a guy out Pickers in our league. He had a top team. He traded for Christian McCaffrey, and he got a hell of a deal. He got because Jeff traded Christian McCaffrey and then McCaffrey got traded again. Everybody was mind blown for what he got. But anyway, so that guy had a good team, and then next thing you know, injuries started dropping on him. He was smart though. He went and gave up his personal first, a first that he acquired, a second, and a player to get his first back. So he knew his team was going down the drain. So I always say, man, injuries in football are I say football is the hardest sport to win a fantasy championship. In baseball, I can replace the players. In basketball, come on, dude, I don't have time for that. Baseball I like though, but I just stopped playing it because I can't find enough people that like baseball.
Yep, can't I yep, not me. I don't like baseball. Sorry, Doc.
That's all me, Jay. We'll have to talk after the show.
Sweet.
But I guess before we do leave, again, I do want to shout out Viridian Global, who is now our official merchant gear for the Going for Two gear. This great hat here, this great shirt, and it's part of the Scott Fishbowl shirts. And I know these shirts, most of the proceeds are going to charity. And honestly, there's a ton of Scott Fishbowl shirts. I think last time I was on, I might have been wearing my plan was last week to show off the Pink Floyd shirt. I think I managed to do that on press coverage last week. I got a Zeppelin one. I also got this great one. It's Women Rock. And I know a lot of sometimes, especially in the fantasy industry. I mean, I wouldn't say especially in the fantasy industry. Just rampant across every industry is still high amounts of sexism. And so I think it just need to be more conscious of that and all forms of discrimination altogether.
Yeah, for real, man.
Well said.
I don't get it. I think we live in a world where people judge too many people on sex, whether I don't know how to say this. Who they love, what sex it is, and religion, racism. Race. It's just ridiculous. If a guy can play sport and he's great at it, so be it. Just appreciate what he gives you. If a lady's intelligent and smart on TV, appreciate what she offers you as an analysis or whatever she is. Don't just say because she's a woman, she's getting by, because that's stupid. Because what she offers is what matters, like the knowledge and everything she gives us. For racism, come on, man. This world is just. We're too judgmental on that. We need to be better. But I love what the fantasy industry is doing, especially the Scott Fishbowl. It's just amazing what we can do if we all unite, which I hope one day we can all unite. And it pained me because Martin Luther King had a great speech about it. That he had a dream, And I think we're doing better, but I think there's a couple bumps on the road. But we can just be better people.
Yeah, I think number one is awareness. And it's my honor to be on a panel with two really highly emotionally intelligent people. And it's great. It's a great message. And I kind of love, and the Dynasty Gambit, we dabble in the deep issues. We don't just talk about football. We hit the heavy stuff too. So it's always a pleasure to be on with you guys and have two open-minded and caring, compassionate individuals. Appreciate that.
And I'll extend it to have like really the entire going for two family. So I think there's a lot of great people, and a lot of great going for two live shows. I know Jeff kind of just announced the schedule for in season as well. So just stay with us here at Going for Two, and we'll do the best we can to kind of all evolve together and help you in all facets. Speaking of helps, we do have a question. So let's actually get to this. Back to the dynasty trades. So in a PPR league, Ezekiel Elliott and Darren Waller on one side. The other side is Travis Kelce and Antonio Gibson. Anyone want to take a first instinct shot at this?
I'll give it a shot. We're talking Antonio Gibson. We're running back. We're talking about.
Yeah. I would assume that. Yes, we have a lot of last names here, but I don't. Taj Gibson or whatever his name is. There's a Gibson for the Eagles. Oh, that's a basketball player. Yeah. Okay, so not him.
Let's talk about the turf toe a little bit real quick, because this is where I want to chime in. This worries me. Like he has had this issue since last year, and I love Gibson. I love his upside. His acquisition cost, as you can see, super high. This could still be a thing. Like, it's kind of been downplayed. People are really kind of ignoring it. This isn't something to ignore. Not saying it's going to be a thing, but I would say based off of that, and if we say Kelce and Waller are kind of even, Kelce's a little bit older. They're both highly productive. So it's like you have a running back who's got high upside in Zeke, who isn't injured. You have a high, one of those high octane tight ends. I'll take that side because of the additional age of Kelce, even though he's an elite player, and Gibson, who has the potential to be an elite player, but still has that injury kind of risk hanging over his head. You're good on either side, but if you made me pick a choice, I would take Zeke and Waller, and that's why.
Yeah, I mean, I think it all depends on what kind of team you have, because, I mean, Zeke and Waller basically – I love Zeke this year. Zeke and Waller are basically kind of born for a championship team, but if you're willing to invest into a young running back like Antonio Gibson, maybe the Gibson-Kelce route is better, but to me, I'm going Darren Waller Zeke, because I don't want to wait for what if Antonio Gibson is a top 5 running back. And we got to think about it too. I mean, they added a lot of weapons in that offense. I mean, they have what's his name, Curtis Samuel. Now Terry McLaurin's going to be healthy. They still got J.D. McKissick back there, right? So I mean, maybe is he going to get the full workload? He was getting a lot of workload, and I love Antonio Gibson. I was high on him last year. I think I had him like top 10 players on my rookie ranking. But it's just the thing it worries me. Turf toe, man. Like, I feel like every year the running back get turf toe, and it's just a nagging injury to have.
It's a problem, and he kind of missed the window for surgery, which is the issue. So this thing could rear its ugly head again, and then he could end up needing surgery. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but that's on the table. And you're not dealing with any of those issues on the other side. Zeke is just locked and loaded, ready to go. First round startup pick, and big part of that Cowboys offense. I don't think it's worth the risk.
I think the Kelce age is huge too. So I mean, Waller still has. I mean, Kelce, what, 32?
30, 31, 32.
I think so. Yeah.
I think Waller's only 30 or 29, right?
He's 28 or 29.
Yeah, I thought turning 29. So yeah.
Yeah. So yeah.
There's you're getting a bit of a 3 years of discounted age. I do think it's a really great question you're posed by V Locken, and I get the process of, okay, at this point, do you want to sell Zeke a year too early rather than a year too late, and to pivot off to get a younger running back? In theory, I like the principle of if it was gonna take Zeke and Waller to move, and you're getting Kelce back, I love it, but I would probably want a better running back than Gibson. I am really hesitant. I think more so than contender, non-contender, I think it's how active is this league trading? Is there a trade done every day in this league? If so, I think I would want the Kelce Gibson side, with the idea that I'm trying to flip Gibson for one of those younger running backs. Like the Jonathan Taylor manager, the DeAndre Swift manager isn't willing to pivot to Zeke. They'd want a younger player, add a pick. Are they willing to move to Gibson, right? So add a little bit extra to get Kelce and a better running back than Gibson. I'd probably be able to do that side. But if this is a league where it's tough to make trades, like they're not as often, I might ride out Zeke in that league, knowing that okay, I might never be able to flip him. I don't mind if he dies on my roster if he continues to be productive, and you get younger at tight end in that sense. So I think that would depend. It's league activity because I think
a really good point. We hadn't mentioned that previously, but league activity is really important. And that's a really good bring up because sometimes, we talk about, oh, you could do this trade, you could do this trade, you could do this trade. I've been in leagues where it's like, it's not going to happen. Like there's no activity. There's no interest. Like you can propose a great deal, a one-sided deal, lose the battle to win the war type of deal. And no one's going to take it because there's just no activity.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think the Zeke Waller side outscores the Kelsey Gibson side this year, but ultimately, I think the value right now still lies with Kelsey Gibson, even though the injury I don't think is being reflected in Gibson's dynasty price. So if you were to acquire him, it would be, I think, for the idea of flipping him immediately. So
yeah, or thinking about potentially not so much this year, but going forward, where he may, the DCMC hype that's coming out, it may not be this year, it may be next year.
Yeah.
All right. Also got the Fantasy BBQ asking, yo, what's up, fellas? So thanks, Eric, for joining.
Eric, how are you?
Man, and now I'm going to go trade Gibson because of Doc.
No, I wouldn't move him. I would just, it's something to consider. Like it's not really being made out to be a thing. Not saying that it's going to be something, but anytime you have somebody with an injury and then they have a whole off season to recover and they're still dealing with the injury the next year, that raises a red flag for me. So it's not like he's being priced as if he's going to be like the next coming of Christian McCaffrey based on the coaching in DC and, because he was a wide receiver and he didn't know how to block and all this other stuff. That all has value, but this may cut into him getting that, high snap share, all that opportunity. And you're at the point now where you're kind of, if you're doing a dynasty startup or something like that, or you're acquiring him, you're essentially buying him maybe even above his ceiling, like, on the prospect of him being the second coming of CMC. If he doesn't quite get there, it kind of feels like Clyde Edwards-Helaire last year. Like he was priced super high because of the potential, and then he fell a little bit short of that. Did 80% or 85% of what his potential could have been, and people say that was a bust. So it feels similar to that.
I wonder if I'm making that pivot. Like, what would it cost to go from Gibson to Edwards-Helaire? Like, I think a second gets it done. Right? Like, I'll move off that Washington offense, buy into that Chiefs offense for the cost of a second.
Yeah, and that's really interesting. That's almost like trading the hype a little bit for the guy who's a post-hype, acquisition, and that's definitely a good way to play the game. Play the market.
Yeah, go buy Trey Sermon.
Well, I mean, at that point, it's okay. I'm pivoting off Gibson for Sermon. Then
don't do that.
But then it's what are you getting on top of Sermon, right? Like, then you're getting the first suddenly, right? So there's a price there to be made too, still, right? So I don't think that's, as much as I'm not as high on Sermon as you are, Gerson. I think there's a play there. Maybe it's not picks. Maybe it's a top 20 wide receiver that you get as well for your trouble. Build some depth, right?
To back up Sermon, in a 32-team league, I just joined on Twitter for Dynasty. I did a lot of experts or whatever, and I drafted Saquon Barkley, J.K. Dobbins, and then Trey Sermon with my first 3 picks. But I decided to blow up this whole 32-team league. I mean, I was like, you know what? I just don't see these 3 players, and then it's just a big ass drop off, So I traded. And now I've acquired 18 picks in next year's draft. I basically
which is half the first round in a weird way.
Yeah.
To say.
So no, not the first round. There's 9 picks in the first round. I think I got like I don't know, it's like 6 or it's just the first round is all I care about because think about it, in a 32-team league, that's basically the first and second round.
So it's not multi-copy.
No, it's just everybody, 32-team league. And I'm telling you, like, I looked at the rosters. I'm like, how the hell is this team going to win with just – and it's IDP too. So IDP 32-team league.
Yeah, okay. So one last question that Eric has for us. Hopefully, I don't think this will take too long. Hopefully, but where do we have? He's asking, where do you have Gibson ranked among the second-year running backs? So for Dynasty, my quick answer is I have him sixth. I think the five guys that all got draft capital ahead of him, I still all have ahead of him. So I have him at six personally.
So who do you have ahead of him?
So I'll go in order. It'll be Jonathan Taylor, Cam Akers, DeAndre Swift, J.K. Dobbins, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and then Antonio Gibson.
Did Christian McCaffrey die or?
No, for just last year's running back.
Second year running back.
Is that what he said?
Guy,
second year running back. Okay.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4. I'm fifth.
Okay, so of the five I named, who do you have him ahead of?
I have Taylor, Akers, Swift, Dobbin.
Okay, so you have him ahead of Edwards-Helaire.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm with Kyle, but it's really close. So we're not off by that much. You know, he's kind of in the same tier. Mm-hmm. I like Edwards-Helaire's upside a little bit more. The injury thing worries me. That's why he's down lower. If that were not the case, then you know you're in the conversation of he might be ahead of Swift, he might be ahead of Dobbins. But that's not the case.
I'll be honest, the injury thing didn't really change it. From the start, I've never really been a big believer in Gibson, and not getting the workload in college always make me question, is he going to be able to handle carries in the NFL? So I've always had him at sixth in that list, and even with Edwards-Helaire's poor season, that never lowered it. And this, the injury didn't change it. He was always going to be sixth for me, so I'm just sticking consistent with Gibson, I think.
Yeah, he would be higher if he was. For me, he wouldn't be higher if he wasn't dealing with this kind of ambiguous, questionable injuries thing still hanging around. It's just raising a red flag for me. I don't like it.
There you go.
All right, so
if I'm going to spend that highly, I don't like it.
Yeah. All right. So, and I mean, really, like those 6 second-year running backs, that's almost half of the top 12 dynasty running backs in terms of rankings. Like if someone has, I don't think it's unusual if someone does have them all in the top 12. I know I think I've got Edwards-Helaire and Gibson out of that top 12. So I still have 4 of those 6 in the top 12. So that's still making up a third of the current top 12. And I think I've got Edwards-Helaire at 13th. So one guy falls out, he's in there too. So I think it's a class that I think they'll all hold up. Like we've seen the 2017 class, those guys all got big, massive second-year contracts. And so it's funny. I mean, let's think about it. Like the top 12 dynasty right now, out of those for running backs, most of them are out of those 2 classes. You've got McCaffrey, you've got Cook, you've got Kamara, you've got Taylor, Akers, and Swift. I mean, that's 6 right there. That's already half of the top 12 just from those 2 classes. Yeah. And then I think you'd add Dobbins. I'd be willing to be close on adding Edwards-Helaire. Aaron Jones was from that 17 class. So, look at that. Great minds, apparently. I think we're going to take a look at the 2020 class, much like we look at the 2017 class. Deep and talented. That's what Eric says. So thanks for the great question, Eric. And now making me look really smart there, too. So I really appreciate it.
Made yourself look smart.
Yep.
Well, you guys really help with that, too. I got great co-hosts.
We are smart guys, so I don't question that.
All right. Well, hopefully the listeners and viewers think that as well, and we were able to give them all the entertainment, and hopefully I think we weren't all that ridiculous, but I don't think we're too boring either. But hopefully, good actionable dynasty advice, and hopefully everyone enjoyed this.
You forgot good looking too.
Yeah, man. Like
that's why I'm wearing the hat. I don't want to scare too many people away, but that's what the doc's here for. Yeah. So I mean, you can check everything out. Going for two live. In terms of all of our live programmings throughout the off season and then in season, things will switch up a little bit. A lot of the times will remain the same. So that'll be great. Definitely recommend everyone check it out. We're all here to try and again do the best we can at fantasy football. You can also check out everything Going for Two in terms of written articles that gets tweeted out the Going for Two account on Twitter at Going for Two Going for _2. You gotta remember to say that one. Here. I guess I'll put the Twitter accounts on the screen, but do each of you want to just share your own accounts and where other places people can find and follow your work you've done?
Sure. Well, you can see right there on Twitter, I'm at TFSDoc. Injuries are starting to happen. We talked about it a bunch today, and once training camp starts, it's going to happen even more. So, to get really in-depth injury analysis and, really thinking about how they can affect this year and going forward, please give a look. Check out my book, Injuries Suck, But Your Fantasy Team Doesn't Have to, available on Amazon. There is a link on my Twitter page. So I think that'll be really helpful to you this year. And looking forward to being on the Armchair Fantasy Show. I believe the date is August 11th. I'm going to be on with Stefania Bell, who I'm just really excited for the whole show. So we're really going to get into some injury stuff, and I'm going to be working with one of the best in the business. So I'm really excited for that coming up. So that'll be on Going for Two as well. So stay tuned for that. And as always, it's a pleasure to see you guys and to work with you guys. So.
Way to doctor your way into that appearance.
Yes. I'm at Fantasy GFS. DFS season going to kick off, obviously, when the season starts. I do plan on doing some I haven't talked to Jeff about it, but I'm pretty sure he's going to let me. I'm going to do a Saturday show by myself, but basically breaking down my running back, quarterback, wide receivers, and tight ends that I'm targeting in redraft, and basically just preparing people for the, because we have redraft content too, like Going for Two. And I love it. Every year I do it, and I get a lot of good feedback. It's my favorite time of the year, at the end of the year, when they send me back pictures saying, you said this, you said that, thank you so much. You said get on this player. Thank you, Logan Thomas. Thank you, Darren Waller. I was like, yeah, nobody knew who these guys were, but with a little research, you can go far away. And then I'll obviously be on the DFS show every Friday with Jeff and Tim. It's a great show, probably my favorite time of the year, honestly. And then on Sunday, guys, I feel like I'm saying like I'm on every show. I'm not, I promise. But on Sunday morning, I will be on the DFS portion of it, which is the first half hour with Gladys, Hamid, who never appears here no more, and Rob FF now, I believe. And I'm excited for the season to start, fellas. We're only 50 days away?
We're getting there.
Yeah, it's incredible. And I know, we're still keeping the off-season programming going here. On top of Dynasty Gambit, I'm also, I host the show called Press Coverage. And one-on-one interview show. Next episode will be Friday, July 23rd. So 8 days from now. Dylan Smitler, who was on Gladys' show, 2-point conversion, a couple months ago. I'm looking forward to that conversation. I know he's had me on his podcast as well, so that should be a blast. We talk some fantasy, but it's a lot about getting to know the content creators and the analysts behind all that content, and really, what started their interest in football and in fantasy and sports in general. I know Dylan covers a lot of sports. So I think he and I are going to talk quite a bit about a lot of different sports in that episode. But yeah, so definitely check that out. It'll be a few good episodes. I know, Doc, I think you're coming on for a special episode of that later at the end of August. And that'll be really when we kick things into the regular season, or it's not regular season, the in-season content.
Yeah, we'll keep that under wraps for now. We'll tease it a little bit, and then we'll talk about it some more.
But yeah, also, so you can follow me on Twitter at Senra Says. And I was going to name something else, but now I can't. So I'm just going to preview or shout out to the Viridian Global gear again. Women rock. They do. And so get that shirt, get all the Scott Fishbowl shirts. Really appreciate the support for everyone for listening, joining us. Really great. Gerson, thanks for joining us as a guest. Again, you're practically a co-host anyway. Doc, you are a co-host. Great there. I know you and I will be converting in season on Monday nights for the 2-point conversion show. Gladys, taking her off-season program, kind of morphing it bigger every week in season. We'll join. Dan will join us again. The B League says. I remember the other thing I was going to talk about, because there's no show for it yet. Nothing's been officially mentioned. I have talked with Jeff and talks behind the scene to see who else wants to join. I guess I haven't talked to Gerson yet about it. Maybe this is me talking to Gerson about it now, but CFL season, the CFL is back. I am Canadian, so I definitely do enjoy watching the CFL. And honestly, I do play some NFL DFS, not to Gerson's level. I'm definitely there on Friday nights watching, learning, taking notes, and setting lineups while I'm listening to the episode, trying to figure out what they're saying and best use that. But where I I've had more success with DFS is CFL DFS. So I'm going to be doing some content for that for Going for Two. I know that kicks off in August, so look for that coming soon. I'll be doing video content with this, maybe even some articles. So look for that kind of on a weekly basis. So go CFL and Going for Two.
That's really interesting. I like that. Finding yourself a nice little niche there. That's really interesting stuff. And, we got G here, and the DFS knowledge that I'm learning, being affiliated with Going for Two, kind of watching you guys do your other shows is tremendous. So this is the time now, I think, to get into DFS if you're not, because you got a whole wealth of knowledge on the network and some really smart people that can help you win a lot of money. And if you do, don't forget about us.
Yeah. Oh, forgot to mention, I think Jeff is going to do a DFS show before the season starts. So we're going to break down how to play DFS and what to do.
Nice.
Because I think that's a key part of DFS is knowing what contests to join, knowing what understanding what money you're putting in and how to best use that money depending on the types of contests it's going to be. So I think that's probably more important than actually your lineup decisions, is understanding what type of contest you're playing in. So that'll be excellent for anyone who hasn't had much DFS experience. That definitely check that preseason preview episode.
Yep.
Love it.
All right. And we're going to sign out. So for Gerson, for Dr. James Freddy, I'm Kyle Senra, and this is the Dynasty Gambit.